Howdy tubers. So I promised I was going to make this video within a week or so, but you know, here I am. Anyways, okay, so I'm not going to make this a long video, but I do want to address KC posted on my last video about surgery about a lawsuit against Dr. Crane, and I want to kind of address that in two ways. I think the first part of this video is going to be me addressing it as an attorney, and then the second part of that will be me addressing it as a guy who's going to let this man do surgery on me. So I say this because it's important to me that I think we have a little bit of a reality check and understanding, and I'll of course explain and justify my position here. But the other piece of it is I want us to, I think when you're talking about a surgery that's so serious, something, I mean, you're asking someone to literally maim your body to fix this part of you that you feel is wrong. And so I don't want us to neglect or to somehow take lightly the reality of what's really happening in this scenario, regardless of who your surgeon is. So let's start with the first part. I want to address Casey's concerns and this young man who has sued Dr. Crane. I looked up the case. I read the pleadings from him and his lawyer. I also read the answer filed by Dr. Crane's lawyers. All of this, by the way, is public information. You can get it online. If I can find the link for it, I'll put the link down here if you want to read it. But here's my assessment after reading the case so far. This is a fairly new case. There hasn't really been much discovery and other... okay, let me back up a little bit. I'm not going to put music in this or anything because I really want you to hear what I'm saying on this one. Just by way of a general background, the way a lawsuit works. If you're going to file a civil lawsuit in almost any court in the United States, it follows a similar process. Every court in every state might have different rules or some slightly different nuances, but the general concept is the same. You're going to have a plaintiff, you're going to have a defendant, you're going to have a cause of action, you're going to have pleadings, you're going to have, you know, all these different things that can be done back and forth. So generally, here's the procedure that's happened in this case. This young man filed this lawsuit against Dr. Crane for medical malpractice. He filed it in the state of California. I am not a California lawyer. I can't promise you I know much about California law, although I will tell you in many instances California law and Texas law are very similar in some very bizarre ways, but mostly most states, their laws are independent. They're unique to the state. And so I can't speak to California law because I'm not a California lawyer. However, all of that being said, here's what my understanding is of the case. The young man filed his lawsuit. He's claiming that Dr. Crane did not inform him of the risks of his surgery, and that Dr. Crane claimed, he claims in his pleadings that Dr. Crane told him that there were no risks to his surgery. The answer that Dr. Crane filed rested on a few defenses. One was the statute of limitations is run. One is that he was informed. It was informed consent, that he knew the risks, therefore he doesn't have a right to sue. And then ultimately that there's no, what we call, there's no issue of material fact, as we'll call a summary judgment. So all of this is very recent, by the way. This young man tried to push this case really fast. Dr. Crane's lawyers asked the court to back up a minute because there was a lot to this case and the allegations, and so they managed to push the court back. So the trial date is set now for February of next year. Now, all of that notwithstanding, here's the bottom line. To have a cause of action in a court, you have to have what we call a justiciable issue. There has to be some issue of fact where there's reasonable minds could differ about the truth or the relevance of that fact. And then a court would have to decide who would be, who has the stronger argument and who would win. The statute of limitations argument is interesting. I'm not certain in California how this works. In Texas, there is a 2-year statute of limitations to file a lawsuit against any medical professional. But the caveat to that is that it's 2 years either from the date you should have known something was wrong or the date you discover that something was wrong. And so in this particular case, if California's statute of limitations is similar, which I'm almost sure it is, if somebody can correct me on that, I did not go look up California state law, but the majority of states for medical malpractice are 2 years. This young man had surgery, I think, in March or April of 2014, and he filed the case in September or October of last year. If that's the case, and if he knew at the time he had the surgery, once the surgery was over, if he knew that Dr. Crane had wronged him in all these ways, then his 2-year statute of limitations would have run in April or May of 2016, and it depends on how the court sees that, but it is possible that his claim is going to be time barred and be thrown out of court. That's one possibility. I'm not saying it will happen that way. I'm saying it could happen that way. Okay? The other piece of it is that some of the allegations he makes, I'm having a little trouble believing, and I'll tell you why. Maybe I would have had a different perspective if I hadn't had a consultation with Dr. Crane and been through his whole process. And having some perspective, I have some friends who are lawyers in the medical field. Doctors are very, very particular. They would never, ever, no doctor would ever tell you with some absolute certainty that this isn't going to happen or that isn't going to happen. They'd be foolish. Any doctor that tells you there's no risk to this or that's not going to happen, you need to walk out of their office. Okay? Seriously. I promise you at this moment, don't stay if a doctor tells you with absolute certainty that there will be no consequence to what you're doing. That they've never had a complication, so it's never going to happen. If any doctor ever tells you that, please leave their office. And any good physician will tell you, if you walk into a doctor's office and they tell you that, leave. Because no one is perfect. Doctors are human beings. Mistakes are made. There's a difference, however, between a mistake that a human being doctor would make and one that practices maliciously, which is what malpractice is, right? Without regard for their patient, their safety, their care, or anything. Dr. Crane didn't strike me as that kind of person, and after I have been through all, the process with him so far, and I'm very new to this, but the process so far has been, I had to fill out some paperwork. There were some very specific directives in the paperwork about the risks of surgery and what I was getting into, and et cetera, et cetera. I had to sign off on that. And then before our meeting, before our consultation, I received a video, an informed consent video that he made. It tells you about all the risks and side effects of surgery, all the things that could happen to you. And then he even says there are things maybe we don't know about yet that could happen to you. Remember, surgery is dependent on your body and who you are, which is kind of what makes part of it terrifying, right? Because if surgery is dependent on whether my body does right or does wrong, then I'm really taking a high risk at this idea that maybe my body does what everybody else's does, or maybe it doesn't, and I'm screwed, right? But that's on me. That's not the power of the physician. It really has to do with my chemistry and who I am and how I'm made up, right? Now, I say all of this because no one can predict the outcome of this young man's case. I will tell you that I suspect what will happen is that and he was not going to like this very much, but he's going to get what he wants. This is the way the legal world works. It is in the best interest of Dr. Crane to settle this case, even if he's not wrong. Even if he did nothing wrong, it's in his best interest to settle the case. So probably what's going to happen is that he's going to settle the case. His malpractice insurance company will pay the claim, and this young man is going to be gagged. In other words, he's not going to be allowed to talk about the case anymore because it'll be part of the settlement agreement. That's totally normal, okay? So all these videos he's making and everything he's talking about and all the bad-mouthing he's been doing about Dr. Crane and his experience, I can't say one way or the other whether his feelings are right or wrong. I wouldn't even delve into that. But what I can tell you from a legal perspective is he's going to probably win his case. It will be through a settlement. They won't go to trial. The insurance company will pay him a certain amount of money, and as a result of them being willing to pay that amount of money, he will be prohibited from discussing this case any further. He won't be able to talk about Dr. Crane anymore. I mean, if I were negotiating on Dr. Crane's behalf, I absolutely would demand that in a settlement. So here's the money you want. Here's the money you're asking for to treat you. I admit nothing wrong, and you don't get to talk about this anymore. That's normal. That is the way this works. Now, I'm going to shift gears because I'm already 11 minutes into this, but hopefully this will be good information. Non-legal side. Myself, Chase, the trans guy. I am absolutely terrified of this surgery, okay? I hate the idea that I have to maim myself to be whole, because whatever parts of my body this man cuts off, they're lost forever. I refuse to do my forearm. That's not going to happen. I told you, I'm going to do my leg. But I'm going to have this gigantic scar on one leg and another scar on the other leg to make the skin grow back on the leg I took the skin off of, right? This is not an easy decision. Are there complications? Hell yeah. Could I die under anesthesia? Yep. And I promise you, when you go in a hospital, any hospital under any condition for any procedure, they make you sign all of these papers saying you understand that anesthesia itself can kill you. Okay? I have a good life here. I'm going to risk everything. My sons, my career, my life itself. I take all of those chances having the surgery. I'm still thinking about it. I've made steps forward to have the surgery, but I'm still in that middle ground where it's like, okay, this is huge. I'm talking about allowing somebody to literally chop up my body, to repurpose and reform it. And even when I do that, it's never going to be what I would have been born with had I been born the way I feel I should have been. So I say all of this in this very long video because I think it's important for us to understand, all of us. And this is the piece of that society clearly fails to recognize. Who the hell would put themselves through all of this pain? We're talking weeks, months, years of recovery. I'm not going to be back up on my feet in a week or two. This is major surgery. 6, 8, 10 weeks minimum just to semi get back to normal. 2 years to get to a place of comfort. It's not a fast process. There is no easy, quick answer. I have seriously thought about this for years. Come December, I will be 8 years on testosterone, almost 9 years in transition. I have given this a tremendous amount of thought, believe me. At one point, I was never going to do lower surgery. And then I thought, if you go back and look at my videos, you'll see. I mean, it's been interesting to watch my own progression through this. At one point, I thought I would just do metoidoplasty because I was like, I'm not going to go through all of that. Now I have a different feeling. Now I realize, after all these years of living the way I have, I'm tired of being half whole. And if that means that I have to go in and have somebody butcher my body to make myself as whole as I can be, I reached that point where that's what I need. So I want you all to think about this from both perspectives, right? Things will go wrong. Surgeons are not perfect. Ultimately, when you decide to have a surgery, please be aware there are risks. Some of them are severe. Many of them depend on your body. I wouldn't be a surgeon if you gave me $1 bazillion. There's no way. That's a terrifying position to be in. But the law is made to hold physicians accountable for their gross negligence, for their inability to give a shit about what they're really doing, versus the fact that you've had to tolerate complications that maybe you didn't think you should expect. I don't know. All I can tell you is this. In the coming months, as we move closer to this, when the doctor finally sets the actual date for my surgery, when they call the insurance company and start making the arrangements, I can promise you there's a lot of second guessing going on in my head. I think this is right for me. I think it's what I need to do. But I'm still in that space. And what I can promise you is this. If we get close enough to this surgery and we get to the point where, the only boundary of no return is when they put me under and start cutting me. Up until that point, I have the right to say no whenever. So I'm going down this path, but at some point, if I decide it's just too much, I'm not ready, I can turn around and walk backwards. But I can't change anything after they take that knife to my body. So I have to be absolutely certain I'm okay and ready to do this. It's not an easy choice. It's difficult. Just like watching this video for 18 minutes is going to be difficult, or has been. So I'm going to cut it off now, but I really wanted you to know this. I wanted you to hear me say what's up. And Casey, I totally respect the fact that you brought that to my attention, and I appreciate it. A couple other people sent me some emails, and it gave me an opportunity to do some research. I feel like I've been given all the information. It was good to know that this lawsuit existed, and it was good for me to go out and read it and understand it and see what was going on. But at the end of the day, I think I've made the right choice with the surgeon that I'm going with. And I don't expect him to be superhuman. I've met many of his patients who have been very, very satisfied with their surgeries. So I'm going to, at this point, moving forward where I'm at, I'm going with it. And if at some point between now and the time the knife comes out, I change my mind, I can just turn around and walk away. It's my choice. All right, you've listened to me enough. I've been almost 20 minutes. It's way too long a YouTube video. Peace.